Good morning, everyone. My name is Carolyn Hart Bennett, and today I'm going to read to you Chapter 42 from Seven Sisters, The Trek. The company made steady progress toward the mountain passes. The contour of the land had changed considerably from the flat, sagebrush-covered prairies of Nebraska and Wyoming territories to the beautiful changing elevations of Utah Territory, with its scattered rocks and colorful rock formations. The saints were thankful for the many pioneers who forged the way before them by digging up and throwing rocks out of the trail and cutting down trees and thick brush in its way. As the train moved down into the first real canyon, the sound of the creaking wagon wheels and the pots and pans, which were hung on the sides and underneath the wagons, began to cause tinkling, tapping sounds that reverberated on the rocks all around them. It sounded like 100 carpenters tapping nails. Everyone listened to the enchanting sounds. Then some of the Utah boys started making hooting calls or whistled back and forth, and these sounds began to echo. It became a cacophony of ricocheting sounds. The saints joined in to test the echoes with their own unique sounds and noises. The children especially loved the racket they could make by laughing or squealing. The further they got into the red sandstone canyon, the more elaborate and awesome it was. Lining the right-hand side of the canyon, towering high above the little valley, was a span of rocks called Castle Rocks, and there were remarkable formations in every direction. The adults, and especially the children, walked a little closer to the wagons so they could be near the teamsters who were telling the names and stories of the unusual-looking rocks. Witch's Rocks, Jack in the Pulpit, Winged Rock, Sentinel Rock, and many more. Some of the names fit them perfectly, but others weren't as obvious. The camping spot that night was spectacularly beautiful. Everyone marveled as they looked up at the massive formations around him. It was definitely the most beautiful camping spot on the whole trek thus far. After they finished their supper chores, many of the saints took walks to see the formations up close. The children wanted to climb the rocks, but were discouraged by their parents. When the evening campfires were built up for the prayer meeting and everyone was gathered, the saints heard some faint tinkling in the distance, which got louder as it got closer. The tinkling turned into tapping and then to banging, and the saints wondered who was invading their camp. The men held their guns close by. Soon they could hear some singing along with the banging. The saints were astonished to spy some mountain men waving flags and marching in time to tin kettles being hit with spoons and sticks. There were only 4 men, but they were making a pretty good racket with the help of the reverberating echoes. I don't know the tune to this one, so I'm just going to make it up. There's a pretty little girl in the outfit ahead. Whoa, ha, Buck, Jerry boy, I wish she were by my side instead. Whoa, Hawk, Buck, and Jerry boy, look at her now with a pout on her lips, as daintily with her fingertips she picks for the fire some buffalo chips. Whoa, ha, Buck, and Jerry boy. The saints all laughed and cheered at the song. They were being serenaded by 4 of the hairiest, wildest-looking, buck-skinned, animal-furred, gun-toting mountain men they had ever that could ever have been assembled in one place. MacArthur stepped forward to greet the men. Welcome, welcome. Come and join us around our campfire. I'm Captain James Duncan MacArthur, in charge of the Dixie train here, and this is a sampling of the best saints the Mormon Church can produce. You won't come across more stalwart people on the face of the earth, especially not out here in the middle of nowhere. Well, I might have to disagree with you on that one, Captain, said their spokesman. These here mountain men are pretty good company, too, and they're brave and courageous, and keep old Jim Bridger here in line, he said, as he patted his chest. The saints took an intake of breath. This was Jim Bridger, the great explorer and mountain man who had caused the church so much trouble just a few years ago. Captains MacArthur and Andrews stiffened and caught each other's eyes. They worried what Bridger was up to. They could tell he and his associates were liquored up. What brings you all together, Jim? He finally asked. We're having a big rendezvous up at Cache Cave this week with about 30 trappers and traders and their wives and children. We saw your campfires and came down to invite you all to join us tomorrow. We're going to do some target shooting, hatchet and knife throwing, wrestling, storytelling, whiskey drinking, and we're going to eat mountain stew made by our squaws. It'll be a grand old time. Sir Evelyn's ears perked up at this invitation. His desire to attend the Mountain Man Rendezvous was about to materialize. He was grinning from ear to ear and hanging on Bridger's every word. "Well, I'm afraid our company will be on our way tomorrow," said MacArthur, and we need to get a good night's rest." This news crushed Sir Evelyn. Seeing he needed to appease the drunken men a little, Captain MacArthur added, "But we'd love to hear some of your stories before you go." The children were overjoyed and clapped their hands at this turn of events. "Yes, tell us some stories," Matthew yelled out. One of the mountaineers offered. "I've got one to tell." The children couldn't help but giggle at this man's appearance, since his 2 front teeth were missing, and he talked with a bit of a whistle. "I do a lot of trapping and bar hunting and fishing, and I know all the rivers around these parts. When I get real lazy, I like to go to this one river that runs so blasted fast it actually cooks the trout in it. Then all I have to do is catch 'em with a net. I don't even have to build a fire." The children laughed merrily. The adults chuckled politely. Another trapper stepped forward. "Did all you children see Independence Rock out in the middle of Nebraska territory on your way out here, sitting there all by itself?" "Yes," the children responded loudly. "Do you know how it got there?" "No, tell us," they cried. "Well, I'm pretty good at skipping rocks on the river. Sometimes I can count up to 10 skips." The children oohed and awed. "This one time I took a flat little rock and skipped it across the sweet water, and it just kept going and growing and going and growing till it skipped right out of the water and plopped down in the middle of nowhere to become Independence Rock." There was a mixture of laughter and groaning at this preposterous story. "Tell them a story about you and the Indians, Jim." "Injuns, Jim," yelled one of his cronies. Jim never shied away from the spotlight. Smiling, he began. "Well, me and the Injuns have a long history together. I've got some tribes who like me and some who hate me. But one day I had some Injuns from one of those tribes who didn't take too kindly to me, and they was chasing me all over the countryside. I took 'em on a merry romp, but they finally chased me up a narrow canyon, which was closed at the other end by a 200-foot waterfall." He paused and waited for the question he wanted to hear. "How did you escape, Mr. Bridger?" Phoebe finally blurted out. "Yes, tell us." Bridger took a deep breath to build up suspense and then blurted out, "I didn't. They killed me." This brought huge guffaws from everyone for several minutes. When it looked like the mountain men were out of stories about petrified forests, glass mountains, and reaching down a bar's throat and grabbing his tail and pulling him inside out, Captain MacArthur hinted that they needed to leave. "Those were some great stories, my friends. Everyone give them some more applause." The mountain men beamed. After the clapping died down a little bit, MacArthur continued. "We thank you for joining us tonight. Is there anything else we can do for you before you have to get back to your rendezvous camp?" "Well, actually, there might be one more thing," said Bridger. "I know some of your women have had a hard trek across the plains, and they don't exactly know what they'll be getting into when they arrive in Salt Lake City. But we mountain men have a great life out here in these beautiful mountains. We hunt and trap and trade and don't have any strict rules we have to follow. We enjoy nature and do whatever we want when we want. Most of us is married to squaws, but some of us is married to white women. It's a great life." "What he's trying to say," said the toothless mountain man, standing up and helping 2 equally unsavory men rise, "is that we 3 want a wife. Who wants to marry us?" The saints were horrified. They could only gasp. No one spoke. They were too dumbfounded. Then, to the surprise of everyone, a sister whose husband died a few weeks ago on the trail stood up and stated, "I'll marry one of you." "Sister Lenny," exclaimed Captain MacArthur, "are you sure about this?" Sister Lenny stepped toward the 3 men. "Yes, I'm sure." "Please think it over before you make such an impulsive decision," he pleaded. "My mind is made up, Captain. I don't have any family left on this train or anybody waiting for me in Salt Lake City, and I've always loved the out-of-doors. I'm going to stay." Astonished chatter spread through the saints. They couldn't believe she would do this. Then another surprise jolted the saints to their very cores. Sister Walmsley and Sister Nightingale stood up. "Since Sister Lenny is so daring to accept this proposal," said Sister Walmsley, "Sister Nightingale and I have decided we want to stay too." The reaction was immediate. "Sisters, why do you want to stay with these men? You've come all this way, and now you are stopping with only a week more of travel to get to Zion?" Sister Walmsley countered. "We have been very unhappy on our journey," she said with a tremor in her voice. "It wasn't anything like we thought it would be," added Sister Nightingale, "and we have suffered. Oh, how we have suffered." "And with no relief," said Sister Walmsley. "We have been questioning the truthfulness of this gospel ever since we landed in America." This revelation shocked the saints. "What are they thinking?" said Lavinia quietly to her sisters. "If they think they have had a hard time thus far, they don't know what murmuring is all about." "Why would they give up the security of the saints they know," ventured Caroline, "to stay with these men whom they don't know?" "They are fools if they think they are going to be better out in the wild than living in a house in the city," said Susanna. "Have they even thought about the approaching winter?" "The men are describing their lives of freedom," said Aunt Lucy, "not their wives' lives of freedom." Sister Lenny walked forward and chose her man by slipping her arm in his. Then the sisters-in-law darted toward the other mountain men. "This one is mine," said Sister Walmsley as she grabbed his arm and pulled him away from her sister-in-law. The man grinned his satisfaction and cackled. Sister Nightingale would have to settle for the last toothless man standing. She forced a smile and tried to make the best of it as she took his arm. "Don't fret, sweetheart," he whistled. "You're getting the best sharpshooter, skinner, and gutter of the bunch." Sister Nightingale brightened and gave a look of superiority to Sister Walmsley. "We want to thank you, Captain MacArthur," said Bridger. "We are much obliged for these women. Now, we'll be leaving you as soon as we get their things rounded up. Then we'll go back to the cave and get married mountain man style, which is the custom of these here mountains." The three women looked at each other and tittered nervously, trying to generate enthusiasm. "I just want to say one thing before you leave," said Captain MacArthur. "The sort of people who are led away from the church by spurious promises and oily tongues are not wanted in the valley. And by staying here, you will save yourselves 2 journeys, one to Utah and one back." Bridger rebutted. "We're leading these women to a life out in nature, brother. That's our church. We can get closer to God out in the mountains than you ever can in a stuffy old church house." "Be that as it may," MacArthur said, "you sisters have your free agency. We wish you much happiness, and let me just quote one of our hymns as you depart. Know this, that every man is free to choose his life and what he'll be. For this eternal truth is given, that God will force no man to heaven. He'll call, persuade, direct aright, and bless with wisdom, love, and light. In nameless ways be good and true, but never force the human mind." There was a noticeable silence at the end of his recitation until Bridger announced, "Come on, ladies, we'll go with you to get your belongings. Welcome to your new life of freedom." The ladies laughed gaily as they marched away, carrying the flags and waving them enthusiastically while the mountain men beat on their pots and pans. After they left the area, Captain MacArthur apologized. "Brothers and sisters, I am so sorry those 3 sisters left our company. I can't believe it. I feel like such a total failure. Please know that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the only true church on earth, and these women will rue the day they left the safety of the gospel." The saints nodded their heads, and some of the women wiped away tears. The 7 sisters were feeling very unsettled and almost sick to their stomachs as they made their way to their tent after the prayer meeting. Sir Evelyn and Lavinia began to lag behind the rest. "Sister Triplet, that was the most extraordinary thing I have ever witnessed. It was a real eye-opener. Didn't you find it eye-opening?" "How do you mean eye-opening?" "It's just so adventurous and romantic that those men offered to marry anyone in the company who wanted to go and join them in the life they lead. I must agree with them about being free out in nature and communing with God among his creations." "That's how your eyes were opened, Sir Evelyn?" "Yes, I would give anything to join them." "You would?" she said in astonishment. He stopped and stood in deep concentration. Lavinia stopped too. I've just had an epiphany, Miss Triplet. I think it was the Spirit telling me what to do. Sir Evelyn, what did the Spirit tell you to do? She said, hoping he had come to his senses. The Spirit is telling me that I shall go up to their rendezvous cave and see if they will let me join with them and learn how to be a mountain man. Sir Evelyn, please don't talk like that. You need to stay with the Dixie train. You need to learn more about the gospel and come with us to Salt Lake City. There you will see the saints and the gospel in action, and you will want to become a member of our church. Well, that was what I thought I wanted when I first joined your wagon train, but I'm not so sure that that is what I want to do anymore. I want adventure and excitement in my life, and I want to enjoy the simple pleasures, to smoke a pipe in the evenings and drink a cup of tea to relax. And I can't do that according to your church's rules and regulations. And one more thing I want is to have a wife who will go with me on this adventure and be by my side. He took her hands in his. Miss Triplet, will you come with me, live this wonderful life of freedom with me, and marry me according to the customs of the mountain men? Lavinia was flabbergasted for several seconds, and then came to a decision. Sir Evelyn, she finally said with resolve, I am very, very sorry, but I do not share your same thoughts or ideas. I will not go with you, nor will I marry you. If you are so easily swayed to give up what you once had a good feeling about and were initially embracing, you are not the kind of husband I want to spend the rest of my life with. Do what you think is best for you, but I will be going to Zion to help build up the kingdom of God there. I'm sorry to say that. I'm sorry to hear that, he said, dropping her hands rather forcefully. I guess I'll just have to get me a squaw like some of the other mountain men have. They are hard workers and wait on their mountain men hand and foot. They tend to their every need, and one really great attribute they have. Eleanor couldn't imagine what he was going to say. They don't talk back, he said, turning on his heel and leaving her standing there. A cold chill swept over her. She felt so alone, so abandoned. She started to cry over the loss of her good friend, Sir Evelyn, who had so much potential to become a faithful member of the church. She had even thought at one time she might consider him a marriage prospect if he joined the church. She wondered if she had just let her only chance to marry slip through her fingers. She was so disappointed and let down. She couldn't bear to enter the tent just yet. She needed to shed some serious tears before she rejoined her sisters. That's the end of chapter 42. So sad. Over and out.